Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. If you enjoy the videos here, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the Word Balloon YouTube channel, and of course, if you enjoy the audios and the videos, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, patreon.com/wordballoon. Always happy to welcome Susan Eisenberg back to Word Balloon. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances, but how are things going, relatively speaking?
Relatively speaking, I'm okay. My family's okay. My friends are okay, so I'm just so grateful for that. But just a challenging, sad time for the
Yeah.
world, not just our country, the world. So I liked that you reached out because it gives us a chance to just lighten the load a little bit, talk about other things, and
Yeah.
not be alone in it. So thank you for reaching out.
Oh, my pleasure, buddy. Always happy to talk to you. And um, I wonder if this has sparked any creativity, given your talents and what you're able to do. I mean, I'm upping my podcasts and trying to do a little more video and things like that, and trying to work on some other narrative podcasts. I was just talking to Julianne Emery uh,
Okay.
on Friday, and I was telling her, and we've likely discussed it as well. Beyond audio drama, which I know you're a heavy participant in, thankfully. Uh, I really am intrigued by narrative podcasts, things like You Must Remember This, the Katrina Longworth show,
Yes, yes, yes.
good storytelling show, and I mean she mostly does it by herself, and I think it's really well written and well performed and produced. Has this period of again kind of being with yourself kind of sparked any ideas?
It has. And, the thing is, it's also changed the way we're doing business too. So that's forced people to be a little bit more creative because we can no longer go and audition at our agent's office or where we were auditioning. And so you have to figure out how you're going to do your home setup. A lot of people already have home studios, but for those people who didn't, this is a chance for them to say, okay, how do I work out of my closet or my guest room or whatever
Yeah,
you have? It's interesting because I was thinking about how I could get some other people involved with maybe reading some old scripts from the Justice
yeah,
League, things
yeah.
like that. Um, so, it's a work in progress, but it's definitely something I'm focusing on and trying to figure out. It would be great if we could just do something entertaining for folks right now.
100%, man. And seriously, God, if I can help in any way, nothing has been said officially, given the nature of the virus. And I don't want to speak for Mitch Halleck and Terrificon, but I was so disappointed because I really was looking forward to seeing you again, but also having everyone else of the cast represented at Terrificon, Andrea as well,
Right,
Romano, and
right.
and I really was like, okay, I'll be talking to Susan soon and figuring out what would be a great table read scene
Hmm.
for all of you to do together and stuff, and it would be wonderful to just even be on stage and see that happen. You don't even need me necessarily to moderate a panel amongst you, but really I was like, oh man, so that would be great. I really hope you can do this.
Yeah, and I would really, that was, along with so many other things. Um, the cons that we all had planned obviously have been canceled. Terrificon is August, so it's like there's still a chance that that could happen, I suppose. But
That's so
just the notion of us all being together and having that experience with the fans, with you, I mean, I mentioned it to Mitch months and months ago, and um, I said, would you be interested in hosting all of us? And he said, absolutely. And, from that moment on, it was just pure joy dealing with all the elements and putting them all together with him and him reaching out to people, me reaching out to people and making it happen. And everyone happily said yes to coming. So yeah, no, it's that was disappointing. If we can do something to not replace it, but to add to it, if that should
yeah.
happen, that would be really wonderful. So stay tuned because I'm trying to work it out.
That's great. Have you listened yet to? And I didn't realize he had been doing it for 2 years now, and maybe you've already been on Rosenblum's podcast. I only saw the video of him and Brandon Routh in like the last month or so.
Yeah, no, Michael's been really invested in his podcast for a long time, and I do listen to them. I support it. I try to retweet whenever he, has somebody on there.
Yeah,
It's hugely popular. We have not been on. I know we've talked about it, and some of the fans have asked him about it. So we're going to try to do. Logistically, it's really challenging. Most of Michael's guests go to his house
sure.
and he does it at his home. It's just, with 7 cast members, that's been a challenge for him. Most of his interviews are like one-on-one. So I
Right.
think that logistically it's been challenging, but I know that Michael would love to do it. He said he would love to do it. So it's just a question of schedule and and working it out with everybody being in town or being able to do the phone patches or something like that. But I trust it'll happen at some point. I always have faith, John. I always keep the faith.
I'm aware. Yes, you do. Well, I'm really proud of you because again, you're Spartacus out there going, "Hey, JLA reunion, JLU reunion, I should say,
Yes.
2021, 20th anniversary. Let's go."
It's fun. I mean, that I'm so glad you brought that up because a part of me, when it was just a spark. Like, okay, let's just ignite this one more time and see what happens. And I didn't expect the response I got. And then I felt badly because people were assuming it was happening and that this was my announcement that it was happening. And I heard from people privately and saw on Twitter that people were asking or so excited. So that then I added a tweet to it and saying, no, 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 this isn't happening. This is just my hope. And let's all make it happen. And because of the 20th anniversary, it just seemed like a perfect time to like, okay, if we're going to do it, kids, let's do it. But the response was extraordinary, and I didn't quite know that would happen, and that was very satisfying because it tells me after all this time and all this effort from so many people with so little response from Warner Brothers and so little reason to hope that people still have hope, and that was really satisfying and rewarding, and it stirred me to keep going, and I will. I will.
Hey, literally a couple generations grew up watching this show, and I think it's one of the best representations of these characters. And yeah, I mean, I'm shrugging right now. Why not? I mean, and there's nothing wrong with doing new productions and having a new take as well. But you could do it alongside. I mean, good Lord, as a diehard Star Trek fan, the original cast was making movies while Next Generation was on TV, and everyone was just fine with that. And that's why I think there's plenty of room. And and I've suggested it to James Tucker on this podcast before, and it's sincere. I mean, it's again,
I heard you
not
on that podcast. I listened to that
I'm glad.
podcast. And I have to tell you, John, I have to tell you, I was so giddy because you were such a freaking cheerleader for the cause. And I was just like smiling. I was beaming as you were asking James. Now, I don't think it would happen with James per se. I think it would
I
happen with
understand.
Bruce,
Sure.
because James does his own universe
Yeah.
basically
Yes.
that's different. And but it was so sweet hearing that conversation, and James was sweet, and it was so heartwarming to hear you bring that up, because God knows you didn't have to bring that up, but it was so dear that you did, and you didn't let it go. I loved it. You were like really persistent, and it was just brilliant, and it made me so happy. So thank you for that. um,
Well,
yeah, I don't know. The thing is, like, I've been asking this for a really long time, and you interview people all the time. You probably know a lot more of the higher ups at Warner Brothers and DC than I do. And I've spoken to Bruce Timm, who said he'd be absolutely happy to do it. But there's no one really high up saying, let's do it. And I don't know who that person would be. I'm not in those rooms
I'm there.
where
Yeah.
these things are being discussed. I know that they're aware of us, the powers that be. I know that they're aware of the hashtag. I I thought it was a gift when we got Justice League versus the Fatal Five to have us
Absolutely.
look like we had looked.
Yeah.
So that was a gift I did not see coming. That was a surprise to me. So I know that it's possible, and I know there's a potential. I just wish I could make it happen, because especially with the 20th anniversary coming up, I can't think of any better gift to the fans than to have a standalone movie that features all of us and is directed by Andrea, who said she would come out of retirement to direct it. Bruce has
Wow.
said he'd be a part of it. All the actors want to do it. The fans are God bless them. They are still there and they're still supporting a reunion. So, if you can figure it out, John,
Uh,
I would really appreciate it.
well, if I could figure it out, I'm sure I'd be sitting on a bigger pile of money right now. And also, you're kind of think that I know the higher ups. I mean, I'm held at arm's length as well. I'm fortunate that James is such a gracious guy, and
He is.
was, I mean, and I really not my intent was never to put him on any sort of hot seat. It was just, James, you're in the room, so like maybe you understand what needs to happen better, and whatever you, and also it's I don't want people to break any non-disclosure agreements or get in trouble with their bosses. That's the last thing that I want. But I do think that it's fair for someone to speak up and say, "Hey, we've got a slate already planned out. That would be great, and we are keeping it in mind. Fatal Five did so well. Again, I'm putting words in others' mouths." But we are kind of like locked into what we're going to do for the next 2 years, so it might be a while before we get to it. Anything, any sort of explanation, because hey, I'm one person, and I know I represent, though, thousands of people who have spoken up on social media, are retweeting and putting on Instagram and Facebook what you're calling for. And again, everyone seems to be on board. And we just got to get to the numbers people to go, look, obviously the fans want this. Again, I give the Star Trek comparison where, they give us a glimpse of the character Christopher Pike, Anson Mount, so great on the second season of Discovery. And
Right.
everyone's like, we want this show. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, we're thinking, we want this show. Yeah, well, we're going to do this. Yeah, great. We want this show. And finally, it's like, okay, at the end of the year, they're like, yeah, well, that's in development. It's like, great, Jesus.
Well,
How loud do we have to yell?
and I think you make a great point in that there's room for so much content,
Yeah,
and the thing that's also frustrating is that we've got friends over there at DC Universe, and there's a place for it to stream if they, I think that DVDs and the Blu-rays, I'm not quite sure that that's the future, as opposed to
absolutely.
the
No, you're right.
streaming. So
Yep.
I mean, I have friends over at DC Universe. They are fans of the show. They have shared with me that they love the idea of a reunion. It's getting all these components together and on the same page and saying yes. The one person I have not spoken to is Jim Krieg, and I don't know if you've interviewed Jim, but
Have it, please.
he seems like somebody that we need to get to, because and have a conversation with about this, because I think that he's also part of this mix, along with Bruce and James, because he I think affects what content we do see and what does get greenlit. So I think we need to get our people on that. And
I
by
always,
people,
I,
I mean you or I have to get to Jim.
I always get him confused with a comic book writer. What is Jim's title over there in animation?
I don't know what his exact title is, but I know that Alan Burnett, when Alan
Yes.
left, I think
Yes.
Jim kind of fit into that position after Alan left. And again,
I see.
this is, I'm the voice actor of a character, so it's not like I know what's going on at Warner Brothers, but I know enough that I know there are quite a few people in that room making decisions, and I think we have some fans in that room, and I think that we don't have some fans in that room, and
Sure.
so I'd love to find out if there's a chance. I've been told, over the years when I've asked people very, just give me it, I can take it. Just tell me, should we stop this? Should we
Sure.
give up hope? Should we stop trying? And I've been told by many people, no, there's always a chance. Don't give up.
People at
But
Warner's have told you that.
yes, yes.
Okay, great.
And again, I think you and I spoke the last time, and I was about to call Bruce Tim and ask him
Yeah,
directly, and I
yeah.
did, and thankfully he picked up the phone.
Ha, ha.
I was I was so I was so thrilled and delighted when he picked up the phone, and interestingly enough, when he picked up, he's like, Susan, and I'm like, wait, how did... he's just I love him, and he was very straight with me in saying that it's not there on the docket to do it. This was maybe 8 months, 9 months ago. That
Okay.
there were
Mhm.
other things being done, but that he'd be open to doing it. But he didn't quite seem to me to be in the position, or want to be in the position, or is in the position to say, this is going to happen next. I'm going to make it happen. So I have yet to get that person on the phone who can actually make it happen. So, here we are talking about it still, and I'll keep talking about it.
Atta girl. Well, honestly, consider the current television landscape, not just animation, but live action, and consider all the reboots of our favorite shows that are happening because they know there's an audience there. And again, this show, I mean, I'm speaking the obvious, but let's remind people that this show succeeded beyond expectations. It was created to be a Y7 show.
Hmm.
And I'm sure I've told you before that, a college roommate of mine who hadn't picked up a comic book or watched a cartoon in 20 years, if not 30 years, is like explaining to his wife why he and I are sitting watching this animated show. She's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Look, you got to understand. This thing is great." He goes, "This is really being written for an adult audience." And she sat down and she's like, "Oh, that really was good." And it's like, yeah. I mean that's the great thing that it started with Batman the animated series, but that
Of course.
progression of shows only got better and I think got bigger. And again, it's to your all of your crew and cast credit that it was so well done and still resonates with people 20
A-
years later.
And I think it often gets left out of the narrative. I think animation often gets left out, where you go from live action to live action, where
Yes,
like you say, there's a whole generation of people who got introduced to DC with these shows, and their introduction to Green Lantern or to Wonder Woman or to Hawk Girl was through the Justice League, and they hold those characters close, and love those characters because of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And I think that if if you don't give that deference, if you don't give that appreciation, I think it's at your peril, because you're ignoring an entire generation of people. And I've always been a little bit heartbroken when the animation piece gets left off in the storytelling of these characters, because
sure.
that they're such an important piece of the timeline. um, so yes, I mean, I will keep you. You're on my short list of people that I keep up to speed with all of this,
Atta
and
girl.
I how much I appreciate your support. And there's a group. There's a core group, and maybe it's 5 people at this point that have just been in it with me from the beginning. And I can't even express how much that loyalty means to me, and how important it is for this. So when it happens, man, drinks are on me. That's all I'm going to say.
I hear you, buddy. Absolutely. We've never talked about because, as you say, you don't have contact with the ups. The people that are signing the checks. Take us just through the general process of maybe you auditioning, who you're dealing with, and then once you get the gig, who are the people that you are talking to. I mean, there's some obvious ones on the list, but yeah, just take us through the process. I know, and we'll talk about the He-Man series. I know you're a part of that. But yeah,
So you mean the original Justice League, the
well,
auditioning for
or
that?
just in general, even titles. You don't have to worry about names, but like, yeah, and you can use Justice League as an example. Were you obviously auditioned for the role of Wonder
I
Woman?
did, and it was, obviously in, I think, 2000 that I auditioned. So, um, and I had done a few guest star roles, on Ghostbusters and things like that, Life with
Cool.
Louie. But I had never been a series regular, and I didn't have that much experience at that time. And so yeah, it was just a regular audition. Everybody, I think, and their mother got the audition to read for Wonder Woman, and then I got a call back and went to Warner Brothers, which was at the time at the Sherman Oaks Galleria Mall, and met Bruce Timm, met Andrea Romano, and was given some sides to read, some part of the script. And Bruce showed me a picture of Diana, and I read the lines, and then they gave me a couple of suggestions in quotation marks, some direction, and and then I read it one more time all the way through, and then they were like, "Thank you and goodbye." And I was like, "Okay." And and then a few weeks later, I got the call that I got the part, and mostly every audition is like that in that you audition for it, you maybe get a call back, rarely though in animation. Um, but thankfully and luckily, because of Wonder Woman, there have been jobs over the years that I've gotten just offers on so that I don't
Wow.
have to audition. Um,
Fantastic.
but ironically, I've had to audition for Wonder Woman several times, and that's hard. Because I feel like there's 51 episodes and several movies that if they want to know how I do it, they can hear that. But if a new project comes along and there's a Wonder Woman in that, I've had to read for that. So, but luckily, again, like DCU Online is a big game, and they've hired me as their Wonder Woman, and that was just an offer. And they've been exceedingly kind and generous with me over the years. They've kept me as her, and they write beautiful material. I'm a huge fan of their team. I'll be doing more work for them, hopefully coming up. So that's a gift. But even other things like getting to do Mira for Brandon Vietti, in the Lego
Yes.
series. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that was just an offer because Brandon and I know each other, and he said, "I hope we get to work together." And then I got a call 6 months later saying, "Would you like to come do this part?" And that's so rare for an actor to have that opportunity and to be given that. So because most of the time you're just reading alongside everybody else, you're auditioning, you're just trying to get the part like everybody else in this town and every other town. And it's just like winning the lottery. That's what it feels like. And you just have to go into every audition, giving it your best, and then walking away and saying, "Okay, I gave it my best, and I'm just going to go move on to the next." And if you get the call that you're moving up to the big leagues, then it's the best day in the world. But most of the time, you just move along and you go to the next audition.
Sure. Absolutely. I didn't realize, and again, this is my lack of gaming. I love gaming, but it is such a time suck
It
that I
is.
mean, the last time Wing Commander was a massively favorite of mine. Loved
Okay.
it. And I
Okay.
mean, would like suddenly like get up from the screen and look at a clock and be like, "What do you mean 3 hours just went by?"
Right.
It just feels like an hour maybe. So yeah, so that kind of warned me. I'm like, it's like a drug. I'm like, all right, maybe stay away from gaming from now. So I didn't realize that obviously DC Universe to kind of stay fresh and always offer new scenarios and stuff. So that's terrific. So how often do they kind of
Well, so it's
give you
DC.
new things to do?
So DCU Online game is different than DC Universe. It's weird that
Oh,
they
excuse
named
me.
it this. It's like it's weird because DCU Online was there and it existed before DC Universe came into being, and
Right,
it's like a
right. That's the
whole.
streaming. DC
Yes,
Universe is the streaming service. So go on,
exactly.
please.
So the game, which has been around for a while, and which
Yeah,
Kevin does Batman and George does Superman, and they do many other stories.
that's
It's not
awesome.
just it's pretty, and they're huge fans of the Justice League. So their creative team, writes Wonder Woman, knowing her history with the Justice League, knowing every episode that happened, and there's such a like a tip of the hat to it all, and it's such a joy voicing her for them. Um, and also like Destiny, I never auditioned for Destiny, the game. I just got a
Hmm.
call saying, would you like to be the voice of the human female player? And I'm like, whatever that means, yes. I don't have any idea what you're talking about. I am not a gamer, and it's just I've gotten to games, voice some really, really, really incredible games, and that is just I love doing it. I have come to so appreciate that relationship with the player, especially out of Destiny, because I was always talking to the player. And there's something so intimate and wonderful about having that relationship you don't obviously know who's going to be playing the game, but you just imagine it, because it's all imagination when you do video games or any of the animation. And I love it. Yeah, I really love it. So again, it's mostly auditions, but once in a while you get lucky and you just get an offer because of Wonder Woman. And that is why Kevin Smith asked me to, come play with him on the He-Man series because of
Yeah.
Wonder Woman. Yeah, it was, so that Wonder Woman thing is like the gift that keeps on giving.
That's fantastic, and really, I was excited for all of you that are former leaguers that are now
Right. Phil, I think,
part
is
of
in
the
it,
He-Man
and
cast.
Kevin and Phil, and I met Kevin Smith about 6 months ago at a Comic Con.
Sure.
We were both in the green room at the same time, and I went over to introduce myself, and he said, "I know who you are. I've seen every episode of the Justice. I know who you are. You're Wonder Woman." And it was just, it was really sweet and flattering, and just said a few words to each other, and then of course a few months later, I got a call to come in and play the sorceress, and that was amazing. And the funny thing is, John, so I spent so much time researching the series, the old movies.
Interesting. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so like I look up, I do a deep dive on YouTube, and you're like, okay, so I don't, because I don't know this world. You know me, I'm like a soap opera gal, right?
I,
So so
yes.
so like if I were playing a part on Guiding Light, I'd know what I'm talking about, but I have no idea of the origins and any of this stuff. So I go on YouTube and I'm looking up Sorceress, and I see that you see the other actresses who have played it, and I'm listening, and it's very ethereal but powerful, and I'm trying so hard to get that voice down, and I don't want to sound like Wonder Woman when I do it, and blah blah, and I'm so prepared, and I go into my session with Kevin, and he's there, and I'm nervous, and and he says, "Okay, so that voice that you use to do Wonder Woman?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "That's what I want." And I'm like, what? It was so funny. So it was, needless to say, kind of an easy gig.
Well, good. But that's isn't it great to have producers like Kevin? And again, I point to my conversation with Julie about Preacher, and
Yeah,
of all, I mean, that's the great thing. Kevin doing He Man, that makes sense. Seth Rogen doing Preacher, and some of the other dramatic things that he and Evan Goldberg have gotten involved with. It's like, wow, that's great, because that's certainly not the broad comedy you expect from them.
right.
And yeah, and it's just like, again, they get the material, so it's great to work with a producer like Kevin that clearly gets the material, and also that's really interesting. It's going to be fun to watch and see. Again, now I'm going to pay attention. You kind of you let the trick out of the bag. We now know that
Well,
it's going to be the same
and it's
voice.
so funny because I'll tell you something. I'll tell you, when you're in the booth and Kevin is on the other side of the booth, where Bruce Timm used to be, and Andrea Romano, and Dwayne McDuffie and Dan
Yeah.
Reba and Stan Berkowitz.
Yep.
And you see Kevin, as you're delivering your lines, you see Kevin grab his chest, like, I don't want to scare anybody because he's fine, but in that way of just being touched by something that you've done. I'll tell you, man, there's just nothing more rewarding as an actor to see your director or producer or writer being happy with what you're doing and being gratified with what you're doing and what you're bringing to it. And making Kevin smile and having him appreciate what I'm bringing to it has been such an amazing gift. So I am I am just so deeply appreciative I get to do this with him and the cast. It was I did not see that coming, and I was, overwhelmed by it.
How many episodes are there for the show, and are you in every episode?
No, I'm a recurring character.
Okay.
I've done two. I was scheduled to do a couple more, at the back end, and we had to cancel those sessions because of
The
what's
virus.
happening in the world right now.
Yeah.
So hopefully when life gets back to normal, hopefully any day now, we'll continue. But it's been such a delightful journey so far, and such a surprising journey because like I said, I didn't see it coming. That I'm thrilled.
So, like, and you mentioned that you were still doing auditions. What can be done in the animation world during this time? Because, again, depending on the level of your home studio, maybe you could do, voice sessions remotely, and that. I don't honestly know.
You absolutely can, and not animation so much. I think that I don't see that happening right now, where we're
Okay.
going to have sessions for animation. Although I am still auditioning, from my home for animation projects, but I think that's because there's a lot of advance for those.
That's what I
So,
figured. Yeah.
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 But commercials, interestingly enough, which is a large part of what I do,
Sure.
is that's still happening. So I'm auditioning pretty much every day for commercials, and that could be done from home, as long as you have a way to connect. If you have ISDN or Source
Right.
Connect,
Yep.
then you're able to do that, and you can you know um, communicate directly with the client, and you're basically the studio, and it goes from there. So that is a game changer, and people have been doing it for a while now. A that's not really
Sure.
truly a game changer, but it's happening a lot with a lot more frequency. And now the average voiceover talent is going to have to equip themselves to be able to do that, because it's happening. And if you don't want to
Sure.
miss jobs or opportunities, you've got to equip yourself. There's just no way around it.
Understood. And Frank Rosa, who I believe is a East Coast sound engineer, works a lot with Gilbert Gottfried on his podcast. A good friend of mine, an actor here in Chicago, was telling me that he's been doing tutorials and helping people set up their home studios.
Oh,
And
really?
so, I mean, I could always use more tips. So I keep meaning to catch one of his sessions. But yeah, he's been doing it pretty consistently every week, since the virus happened and everything. So now, along with commercials, I wonder, because as you know, I love what you're doing on Suspense, the audio drama revival,
I
and
love it.
I don't know if how that's going during this situation.
Well, that's not going. We were supposed to have our last one of our last recordings happen. I don't know, like a month ago, and so that ceased because it's a very small booth that we use, and we're all in it
Sure.
together.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, so John, who heads up Suspense and Blue Hour Productions, John said, "You know what? I'm gonna not do it, because I don't want to put anyone at risk, and we'll
Sure.
just do it when we come back." But you and I've talked about it. That has just been such a joy, being able to do these old, because they're old suspense shows, radio dramas that then John adapts
Hmm.
to now, and it's so fun being able to play these characters, and go back in time with a completely different era, and get to play these like campy or over the top,
Sure.
um, femme fatales, and you
Sure.
know it, it's because you don't really get to do that in most of the. I would love it if there were an animated series that revolved around some of these characters,
Oh
as
God, yeah.
opposed, right? It would be so fun. I don't think anyone's done that now that I'm thinking about it.
The only thing close to that is for a while, and I'm sure you might be aware of those DC Showcase short 15 or 12-minute videos they were doing along with the feature releases. And God, there was a Spectre story. that the guy behind 30 Days of Night, Steve, and now I'm blanking like a moron.
I
The
hate that. I hate that. I hate
but
that.
he wrote it. He wrote it, and it really was like it could have been made by Blumhouse if they had made it as a live action kind of story, and it definitely was a horror story. Or they did a Jonah West 15-minute western, much better than the film, frankly, and more
Yes,
and more
see, that
accurate.
stuff's great. I mean,
Absolutely.
um, you know, so anyway, that's on hold also
Okay.
because that involves an ensemble and we're all together recording it. And again, we have a small booth, a big space, but a small booth. So that's on hold. But that continues to be an outlet
That's great.
for me and so many other. I mean, John Elsadek, who is the head of that and who created it. When I started doing it, and I started late. I mean, it had already been up and running for a long time. There were a group of people, but it wasn't huge. Now John literally can ask anybody to participate, and everyone wants to do it. So it's gotten very popular because people just want to be in front of a microphone, and whether you're getting paid or you're not getting paid, if you get to tell a story, it's an opportunity.
I understand, and well, you and I grew up enjoying old radio and everything, and I think for a newer generation, they may not realize how good the writing was and how great the performances were. I always say William Conrad,
Oh
who,
God.
God, again, yeah, I mean, he on television, Cannon and Jake and the Fat Man, but on
So good.
radio, I maybe I've said this to you before. He's like the Spencer Tracy of radio.
He
He
is,
was
and
so great.
he was so great. And also, like before people even knew him as like he was in so many noir films. My God, and always
Yes.
chewing the scenery a little bit. Like chewing on a toothpick or having gum and taking it out in the
Oh
middle of a
yeah.
scene. I mean, it's really I cannot get over how prolific he was as an actor before he became so well known in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Um, God, he was so good. He was so good. And
No.
for any people out there listening, if you want to, check out these radio dramas because they're so fun. And there's
Yeah.
channels on Sirius XM. I listen to
True.
the channel all the time where I get to listen to my radio classics. I love it.
And also, the Internet Archive has a lot
Oh,
of MP3s, and really, I mean, every genre, comedy and tons of great detective shows and noir, tons of great horror. I'm always happy when I see at Halloween somebody smart that knows will post like these are the 30 best Halloween radio shows
oh, see,
ever.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Now,
and
are you a fan of Noir Alley? Do you listen to Do you
oh,
watch TCM?
I do. Although I must admit, I was a little miffed at my cable system that suddenly made Turner a premium channel,
I
and
know
I'm
that
like,
was
hey man, not cool. And I haven't bitten the bullet yet. So instead, I'm waiting. I guess I've heard that HBO Max is coming in May, and I had heard initially that Turner was going to be a part of it. So
really
yeah, so
okay.
so right now I'm kind of jonesing. Although between Amazon and some of the other channels, I get a lot of classic movies. But you miss those great. They're not great, but Poverty Row, Monogram, and some of those others that would just churn out. Bulldog Drummond and some of the Boston Blackie and some of those other great like uh, what they call them program films. I mean, essentially just film series. The,
They were
the the forerunner of television, really, because yeah, they'd crank out like two or three Bulldog Drummond movies a year, and or Charlie Chan or some of the other characters, Sherlock Holmes, certainly with Universal. I mean, they're terrific. No, I love that stuff, and I love Noir Alley, and yeah, so I am kind of missing
Yeah,
it
Eddie
right.
Muller. I mean,
Oh God,
I just love him, and
genius!
he's genius. And
Yeah,
he just, there's so many, I studied film in school. That was my major. And, I'm still a student. So I
sure.
love listening to him and hearing all the aspects of the filmmaking. And it's just so enjoyable. So the radio dramas, they let you live out that a little bit
Oh
and you
yeah.
get to be a part of it. I get to be these wonderful characters. So yeah, no, that'll hopefully continue when when life gets back to normal. Please God, any day soon.
I hear you, buddy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
John is, really adapting from the best because that guy from Suspense, William Spear. I mean, if you go back and read articles about the show, they literally called him the Hitchcock of the air, and he was. I
It's
mean, these
brilliant.
yeah, great stories. I mean, have you ever heard? Was it Orson Welles, the two-parter Donovan's Brain, where
Yes.
so good.
Recently, though, I think recently, and he's another one. Orson Welles, my God. I mean, all the
Yes,
radio. So, I mean, if anyone's out there who loves this stuff, there's so much content. And actually, Amazon Prime does have a lot of the old noir films on
absolutely
there.
they do. Yes, they do.
Um, so if you're jonesing,
Oh
until
yeah.
you get HBO Max or until TCM comes back into your life, and I have the TCM app. I mean, not to show off, but
Oh no, I did too. I know.
I love it. I love it because it's like every day. That's what I go on and see what's new. What's their
Sure.
new lineup for today. And today's Betty Davis's birthday, by the way.
Oh man, you see exactly because I'll see it on my cable guide and I'll be like, all right, I guess I won't be watching today. That's fine. Okay. I mean,
There's going
again,
to be a lot of Betty Davis today, so it's all good. It's
now
all good.
Voyager, I'm sure will be at 7 o'clock or something like that. I would
Oh,
think.
I certainly hope so.
And All About Eve, of course.
All About Eve is my favorite. Is my favorite. I
I
mean, there
respect
is.
that totally.
Oh God, I can watch that movie. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen it and how many times I will see it again. I just love it so much. The
Well, that's
writing,
yeah.
it's just brilliant on every level. I mean, the writing, and then you put all those actors together in
Yes.
that, and Joe Mankiewicz. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the best.
I'm telling you. No, I feel the same way. And I have a friend. I don't know if you know Robert Meyer Burnett. He made a movie called Free Enterprise back in 1999. He's a YouTuber, and
Okay,
he's a massive old film fan, and mostly he's kind of dealing with the current sci-fi and horror scene, both film, TV, also comics. But he's a massive old movie fan, and yeah, I know for a fact All About Eve is his absolute favorite film, and I can't blame him. It's one of the best, absolutely. A good Billy Wilder movie, a good, you know. I mean, now I'm blanking all this stuff, but yeah, or like you said, Orson Welles. It was funny, and you say that you forget how much radio Wells did, and I've listened to also, by the way, available both on YouTube and I believe the Internet Archive. Peter Bogdanovich did those incredible audio interviews with
interviews,
Wells.
yeah, with
Yeah,
Orson.
and
Yeah,
he
I mean
says
those.
that was his big. He says radio. He goes, really, film, TV, whatever. He's like, really, my main medium was radio, and it was. He did so much.
He did. I mean, so I, I hope there are a couple of fans out there listening
Oh
who,
yeah,
who can go for a
appreciate it.
deep dive, go for a deep dive after this, and find some things. But yeah.
Hey, Suze, we got to get you on. I don't know if you'd be interested in doing this, and forgive me for asking you on the air, but I've been doing quizzes, another time waster, and maybe, unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be, kind of in this situation for a little while, and maybe in a few weeks it'd be great to have you on and have someone else that's a big fan of a certain. We could do old movies, we could do whatever thing you feel like you know your stuff, and it would be a lot of fun, I think, to
Oh, that's
have
so
you play
fun.
along.
I would definitely do that.
Oh, that's
Um,
great to hear.
yeah, that sounds. I mean, and I don't like lists because they freak me out a little bit. Like when people say top five.
Oh yeah,
Um, but, I mean, I'll do it once in a while, but it's like there's so many that then you feel the pressure of like, oh God, what if I forget this one?
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
but when we were talking about All About Eve, I mean, that would have to be on my top 10 list of all time favorite movies.
I can appreciate that. That's awesome. Absolutely.
Yes.
See, North by Northwest is likely on mine.
Okay.
Uh,
What else?
the Odd Couple, the original Odd Couple. I love it.
Oh,
I mean,
interesting.
that
Okay.
movie and play is bulletproof, and that's why high school kids can do that material and get laughs because it's so damn good and so well written. And I love the television show as well. But man, I mean, Mathout's the quintessential Oscar Madison. I mean, even that terrible sequel they they made before they both passed away.
I
It's
know.
like there's even just a couple moments in there that are like, all right, that's fine. Like especially like the first 10 or so moments of a retired Oscar Madison in Florida, still playing poker with retirees. Half the group's now women, and it's very very funny. And he's Oscar Madison again. It was
He to-
fantastic.
yeah, no, what I mean that I have to see that again. In fact, Oh God was on
Oh, I love that.
TCM the other day, and I have not seen it in 30, 40 years.
Sure.
And or 30 years, I guess. And we watched it, and it was so funny and so good and just solid. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And one of my closest friends, Rachel Longacre, plays John's daughter.
Wow.
Rachel's not acting now, but she did a lot as a child. And She played his daughter, and I'm like, we're watching it. I'm like, oh my God, there's Rachel.
That's
It was
fantastic.
so surprising and wonderful. So, yeah. So,
John Denver. Who knew John
yeah,
Denver would be? I mean, he was always a funny performer beyond singing great and everything. But I mean, hey, not every. I mean, God, let's look at the other end of the spectrum. Poor Neil Diamond, and I still love to watch it in The Jazz Singer. I mean,
right.
it could be that kind of experience as
No, you
well.
know who I find when you put them in a movie or an acting role are usually great is comedians.
Yes,
Comedians tend to be amazing, but who knew singers? I mean, sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes, like you say, Neil Diamond, not so much. But
Chris
um,
Isaac is a good actor. I mean,
who was?
Chris Isaac to
Oh,
name somebody out
yes,
of the
he
blue. You
was
know,
excellent.
yeah.
Yeah, God, haven't thought about him in forever.
And Harry Connick for that matter, sticking to male singers and
You're
everything.
right. You're right. And he had that whole like, hottie thing going on too, that leading
Sure.
man thing going on.
Yeah. Well,
Back in the
Isaac did
day,
for that matter. I think. I think. I don't know.
he's still a hottie.
You're killing me. That's fantastic. Jesus. Oh man. Well, Susie, any yeah, I mean, I appreciate the conversation. I'm trying to think if there's anything else you want to talk about or anything. You know, it's always good to kick back and visit with you.
It's always fun. I'm just, I mean, I think that right now everything's in such a holding pattern that, I think we could do a whole hour just on old movies.
Hey man, we can keep going. Absolutely. Good Lord. I I'm trying to think of let's see what other classics that I just watched. Oh, another you
Double
mentioned
Indemnity.
Double Indemnity is fantastic. Absolutely. If you want to keep
Fantastic.
it at noir, sure,
Oh,
man. You
so
know
good.
what I discovered thanks to Noir Alley? Um, it's called Mystery Street, and it's Ricardo Montalban from like 1950. And I've always respected him in general, but man, he went up like five notches with that movie. And it's such a great low key noir. He plays a forensic or no, he's a policeman, but they're using forensic science to solve a murder. And this is in 1950, and it's a very old one of his first movies. John Sturges, who did, of course, Great Escape and Magnificent Seven, among other classic films over the years, and it's so good. And then there's one that's sitting on my DVR when I still had Turner, and thankfully it didn't disappear when I stopped
Right.
getting it. It's a boxing movie that they made together called Right Cross, and I haven't gotten to that. I believe, oh God, the boy crooner that became Philip Marlowe in the '40s, and he was in Murder My Sweet, and he was a big radio actor too. He was in Richard Powell, Dick Powell.
Oh, Dick. Oh God, Dick
Yeah,
Powell. My
yeah,
God, talk about prolific.
yes.
Jeez, he's in everything.
And
He was in.
he could have been done after like his period as a, 30s boy singer, cute boy singer, and instead matures into this great actor and is kicking ass both on radio and in film in the 40s and 50s into the 60s until he passed away.
Right.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm telling you.
It, I know.
All right,
I
your turn.
know.
Another movie.
No, I mean, so okay. And also with the film noir thing, I just love that they have all these titles that you're like, okay, I haven't seen that one.
Sure.
So that's because a lot of the famous ones we've all seen. Double
Absolutely.
Indemnity we've all seen
Certainly.
many many times. But you get some of these other ones, and you're like, he was in that, like Ricardo. Like all these
Right.
actors, and it's such a treat to be able to see them. Um,
All right, while you're thinking, The People versus O'Hara was this MGM Spencer Tracy movie that I had never seen before, and was blown away. And it was definitely a crime movie, and a little out of Tracy's comfort zone. And then, oh God, what was it called? It was based on, or it was named after the country they're in. A World War II movie. It's the only time I know of that Jimmy Stewart and Spencer Tracy were together. I'm going to look it up while you're going to
okay,
tell
yeah,
me
look
more.
it up. And then I was going to just say one word, and that is Godfather.
Well,
Da da da
yeah.
da 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 da.
All right, where are you on three? Do you hate three? Because I can find. I mean, it's never going to be as great as the first two, obviously, but I do think three has moments.
Well, three has Andy Garcia, so that was a lot for me.
Man, I am digging this. This is
Oh
fantastic.
yeah,
All right,
no, Andy
we know Susan's
Garcia.
list now. All right,
No,
come
Andy
on.
Garcia is like he was
Oh, sure.
so wonderful in the part. But one of the I thought it was awful. I mean, I really did, and I just
Ah,
it's kind of hard to watch it. But there were moments in it that were So lovely. Like that scene with Diane Keaton and Al Pacino, where they're looking at the photos on the wall, and the music is cued, and they just are like it's the past and the old shots of them, and that to me is worth it right there. That and Andy Garcia, but everything else I could do without. I mean, just George Hamilton.
George Hamilton, yeah,
No,
poor.
no,
I
poor
know,
George.
I know.
No, that's just wrong. And
But you know,
um,
I can almost find an argument for it in terms of, well, he doesn't need Tom. I mean, it's a shame. It would have been awesome, obviously, to have Duvall come back, and I've heard Duvall's reasons not to, and obviously they didn't
right,
want
and
to
I
pay
think
him.
that was a money thing. I
Yeah,
think that was a money
yeah,
thing, right? That they didn't want to pay him what, and I think that's such a mistake. Pay
of
them
course it was.
and get the
Absolutely.
authenticity for the story. You lose the authenticity, and then you don't. Then it might as well just be called, you know, Gangster 3 because it has no correlation to the original two movies. I mean, it was just.
Oh yeah, I
But
mean,
the first and second movie, I don't think you can find a better film.
I agree.
It's everything,
And
everything.
how often is a sequel as good as the first film?
Exactly,
No, I agree with you. I'm a
exactly.
big French Connection fan, and by the way,
Oh, love it, love it.
and French Connection 2, which wasn't directed by Friedkin, but was directed by John Frankenheimer, who's a genius as well,
Right,
is a
exactly.
pretty
You
good
might as
chapter two. A pretty good
it
chapter
is,
two to French Connection.
it is. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm with you. And I was going to say about Hamilton, uh, it kind of, to me, from a story standpoint, almost makes sense because as Michael Corleone is trying to be more legitimate, you could see him hiring a Hamilton to not be his consigliere, but handle that function in the legitimate business world. But also, I did like the Vatican storyline and the Vatican Bank storyline, and I found that really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. No, I agree with that, and I think that there's definitely always a relationship there between criminality and uh, organized religion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's always a
You know what's crazy?
even to this day.
And I don't go to church. I'm a terrible Christian, but Greek Orthodox Church. We had a great priest that everybody loved. The diocese moved him out of the parish and brought in this guy from Milwaukee, who it turned out in Milwaukee was running a Ponzi scheme with old people's money, and thankfully was arrested within 6 months of coming to our parish and everything.
Parish,
Yeah,
right.
and it was just ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, there you go. Isn't that nice?
Right. So, those stories resonate with people
Yeah.
because, there usually is a link there. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
uh, okay. So what else? So Godfather's on our list, right?
All
We
right.
both
Yeah,
agree
I
to
like
that.
that.
You know what we watched last night was The Spy Who Came in from the Cold with
Great movie.
with
I love the
Richard
book
Burton.
too. Yes, Richard Burton is amazing in that movie.
Oh
Oh my
God,
God.
that was good.
Everything Le Carre wrote. I mean, I'm a big reader as well, and yeah, I mean, in most of the adaptations of Le Carre's stuff, I mean, certainly, not Smiley's people. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I mean,
Yes,
both the
exactly.
miniseries with Alec Guinness and the modern one with Gary Oldman, both
Right.
great.
Saw them both. Yep.
Atta girl, of course you did. Nice going. So, I don't know if you feel this way, but a lot of times with crime, I am fascinated by the European productions just because of the not usually New York or Canada pretending to be New York or whatever. I mean, it's nice, Vancouver, I guess. It's nice to get a different feel for police procedurals and crime films from other countries. I also find when I have the patience, I sit down and will watch even the ones that are subtitled because I want them to be as authentic as possible. You just
A
need
hundred
to
percent.
have that frame of mind to really like pay attention to the dialogue and
Yeah,
everything.
no, 100%. And I agree with you. Like, there's just nothing um, better than a Lumet, New York, gritty crime. A Serpico or a uh, oh God, Attica. What's the one with
Oh
Attica?
yeah,
Um,
don't shame on us.
Dog
Yeah,
Day Afternoon.
Dog Day Afternoon, Attic Girl. There you go.
So something like that's really the taking of Pelham 123. I mean
The
that New
best.
York, the gritty, right? But then
I
there's
love that
something.
movie. To me, taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, I always say that's like an R-rated Barney Miller,
It's great.
and I
It
love
was
and I
just
love
on.
Barney Miller, but it's
Me too.
it's it's so New York cop.
It's
It's so
so New York.
fantastic.
It's just perfect. But then there's something. riveting about seeing, like you said, the European version of that. And luckily we get to see everything. I mean, if you're streaming like Criterion or all of these channels have so much great content that you can really spend your days,
Oh yeah.
watching these movies. I mean, if you're a cinephile, you
Well,
can
and
just,
also it's been fun to see that at least in Chicago, and I'm sure in other big cities, one of the PBS channels pulls in a foreign feed, and I forget what the channel is titled, but I mean literally I'm seeing crime procedurals from Italy and from Sweden and Germany and France, and they're subtitled, but they're great. They're great. I mean, they're television shows, but they're 90-minute teleplays. I mean, as good as a decent film. So yeah, they're fun.
oh God, 100%. So I think this all comes full circle to saying there's a lot of content out there. There are a lot of platforms out there, which means there's room for a Justice League reunion.
Atta girl, yes indeed. Absolutely. And for this podcast conversation, absolutely, man.
Always,
So
always for this podcast
hey,
conversation.
as always, seriously, great conversation, great talk, and truly happy to once again float the idea that we need a Justice League union reunion or unlimited reunion.
And let me just say, I have the biggest smile on my face right now because I just adore you, and I just so appreciate, all of it. I just the support, the platform, all of it, John.
Susan, you know
You're
that
just
seriously, from the first conversation, you were much like the Benson sisters. I think the moment we met, it's like, oh, this is a cool person. I'm going to be talking a lot to this
yeah.
person.
Well, it's kindred spirits. We have to hang
Yes.
together.
Well, hopefully, I mean, I guess things are still up in the air for Terrificon, but if not, and maybe Mitch will be able to reschedule. We'll see if the August date doesn't work, and we'll see how that. I mean, again, all of us are really just kind of waiting to see how the months progress, and
Exactly, and I know a lot of the Comic Cons have rescheduled already.
yes.
They already came out with their, schedule dates for the new, if everything's okay. So, the great thing about Mitch is he's a good guy and he's so gracious. And if he can make it work, I know he will. So we have to I put my faith in him, and hopefully it'll work out at some point.
Well, as always, I appreciate your support and good graces, and the fact that you come on and we still find reasons to talk to each other and have a good conversation.
Well,
So,
John, you got a lot of Twitter love recently. I saw all those posts about you. I mean, it was really lovely. Everyone extolling your podcast, and it was really something. I was just like applauding there, trying
uh,
to retweet as many of those lovely tweets as I could, or that I saw, because people were really out there supporting you.
it means a lot, and I certainly say it at the beginning of the show, but you're giving me the opportunity to thank everybody again, and the new people that have jumped on, and people who have upped their Patreon subscriptions. It's very gratifying, and it's nice to see that I'm not spitting in the wind. That someone's
Did you? I mean, were you surprised at how
incredibly
many?
surprised. Yes.
Because it was really people. I just, it was like they were screaming from the rooftops to, like, for people to pay attention to you and support you. And it made me very happy.
Me too. I mean, again, hey, I don't kid myself. There are a ton of podcasters out there. There are a ton of YouTube channels out there. And the response from creator and reader and listener alike is really overwhelming and truly appreciated. I mean, it's great. I mean, I'm coming on my 15th anniversary of doing this, so I'm not
Wow.
the new kid on the block anymore.
Wow.
And it's great. I'm glad that people care, and maybe it reminded people, oh yeah, it's been a while since I've listened to Word Balloon, and also the really nice emails that I've gotten from people, letting me know beyond being patrons, just hey man, we really like what you're doing. So
Oh, that's
that's huge.
amazing. Well,
Yeah.
well done, you, because,
Oh,
I'm a big fan, and I just, wish you the best. That's all.
likewise, buddy, and we'll talk again. I'm going to hold you to that. We're going to maybe we could do a noir quiz or something. Although noir quiz is pretty tough.
That is
Do
tough.
you have Trivial Pursuit Silver Screen Edition?
No. I
Oh
did.
God,
You know what I did? At one point I did.
sure.
It's probably in a closet in, like, like in the back of a closet next to my, like, high school yearbook. I
Well,
have
that's
to go
kind of
digging.
that's how it started with the Bensons and Tom King, because they're a little younger than us, and
Yes.
I'm like, guys, this is a great game because it's hard. It's really really hard, and I play along when we do silver screen and stuff. And yeah, it's terrific. And God, when I was in college, we used to play it. Me and my buddies that were movie buffs, we'd play it like poker. We'd all play like $5 a game. Whoever wins, like we throw money in the
That's
pot.
genius.
It's
Oh, I
hilarious.
love that.
So yeah, but that's pretty tough. But I've also got the TCM movie trivia book, and we can randomly pick questions from that. But we'll have to. Hey, I don't know if you'd want to do it, but your dear friend Scotty from General Hospital, and forgive me, I'm blanking on his name, but I
Ken
love him.
Schreiner. Ken Schreiner.
Yes, and it's such a great. So yeah, I don't know if you.
Yeah, he's a huge TCM. I mean,
Oh, there you
yeah.
go, man.
Oh
Oh,
man, he is he
it's
is
an
deep
excuse for me to
in.
get.
He
I'd
is.
have to like do my 10 minutes of Scotty. So tell me what it was like when.
Hey, he's so gracious with that stuff. I mean, he's been on the show I think 42, 3 years now. So he's exceedingly gracious with fans
Oh
who,
man.
yeah, he's terrific.
Well, there you go. Then maybe that's your opponent for the upcoming quiz that we'll do.
Oh, no way. No way. I'm not having him as my opponent.
All
I'll
right,
have
then you
it.
guys can be a team or something like that. We'll find another team to play with you.
Okay, well, listen, to be continued, and I'm always around. Thank you.
Thanks again for watching another Word Balloon video. We've got plenty more at our channel, Word Balloon. If you enjoyed it, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, support me on Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thanks a lot for watching.